What is up, everybody? Welcome into this episode of NBA Season Previews 2024-2025 on Vendetta Sports Media. I'm Jerry Walker, and alongside me today is Matt Hanifan. Matt, we have the Toronto Raptors on the docket today. Didn't do too great last year. We'll hop into them in a second. But how you doing? Excited for the NBA season? We are recording this one day out. We are recording this Monday, October 21st. NBA season gets kicked off tomorrow afternoon. Cannot wait here. So you just as excited as I am?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is my time of year. I can't wait to have basketball in my life for the next 6, 7, 8+ months. Even though it's already been in my life with preseason. Rewatching summer league for scouting purposes, some of these guys. But no, I'm very excited for this upcoming NBA season. I'm very excited for the college basketball season. I'm sure Raptors fans will be excited for the college basketball season given their current roster outlook. We'll talk about that in a little bit. No, man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm just pumped. This is why October. You always get that debate, October or March. Love March Madness. Love spring training getting started. All the hockey, basketball coming to the end of their regular season. But October, it's hard to beat it. We have all the football going on. I'm a big soccer fan. That's all underway. Obviously, NBA's around the corner. NHL just started. It's a grand old time. So I'm loving every second of it. But on to the Toronto Raptors. And it's safe to say it wasn't exactly a very good year, but to be expected when you trade away all your good players and kind of tank for a high pick. Finished 25-57. 11 game or 9 game, or no, it was 11 games out of a play-in spot. Not great last year. They did a lot this offseason, or made a lot of moves last season, I guess it was more the thing. A lot of trades. What did you think of their season last year, and was it kind of what you expected it to be, considering their outlook?
Not necessarily. To some extent, yes. I did think at some point the Pascal Siakam thing was going to come to an end. He was on an expiring deal last season. The OG Anunoby thing, if you're going to trade Siakam, you're probably going to trade Anunoby. I am surprised. So they traded Anunoby to the Knicks. They got a haul back, including Emmanuel Quickly, who I love, and I think that's a really good, developmental, cornerstone for them, as a team. But then they trade Siakam to Indiana. They get Bruce Brown back, among other pieces, other players. But the thing that was interesting with us, I'm surprised they didn't go up and trade Bruce Brown after that, and instead they traded for Kelly Olynyk, which I thought was interesting. I know Kelly Olynyk is from Toronto, or not. Maybe I don't know if he's from Toronto, but he's from Canada.
Yeah.
And so he is Canadian. He did sign an extension with them this offseason. That's somewhere where he wants to be. He considers it home. But I'm surprised they went that direction with the deadline instead of trying to stack assets, continue to stack assets onto itself. But after you trade a guy like Pascal Siakam, after they kind of picked a direction with that, I don't want to say experiment, but they picked a direction there finally. I think it was maybe a year or two too late than when they actually did it. And they were able to get sizable hauls back, and they were able to get solid pieces back, and so they got Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett, in the Knicks trade, and so I'm not surprised from that angle, but what I am surprised about, I guess, again, was the deadline stuff and not trying to continue to stack more onto it. They did finish 25-57. They were one of the worst teams in the East. I was surprised a little bit with, again, their offseason. Because, again, they did I'm not surprised they extended Scotty Barnes. I know people didn't like that. I wasn't that opposed to it. I think they kind of had to do it because of the situation they were in. I believe they also extended Quickly. That's not also something that I was really that surprised by. I think, again, as I just said, he's going to be a cornerstone. Again, I'm just surprised they didn't really they traded for Davion Mitchell. Cool. Davion Mitchell's a fine player in Sacramento. I think he was kind of the odd man looking out there. But I am just, again, they didn't try to trade Bruce Brown. They didn't try to, trade some of the other pieces that they could have potentially traded. I know Darko is a solid coach, and I think he's a good offensive mind. So I think he's going to have a better second year just from a coaching perspective. It may not result into wins and losses, but I do think he knows what to expect heading into his second year as an NBA head coach, as a guy who is an offensive-minded head coach, and I think he's going to get the most out of him from that perspective. And I think he'll do a fine job developing him. They got bit, not in the lottery, but like they were kind of bit in the lottery. They drafted Jacoby Walter, a couple other guys that they drafted, Jonathan Mogbo, with the number 1 overall pick in the second round, which was a guy that I like to a do-it-all big wing who. I mean, he's like a small ball 5 and big wing, whatever you want to classify it as, who can't really shoot, but he was so awesome as a passer, as a processor, as a rebounder at San Francisco. Ulrich Chomsche, who was a guy that was very, very young. He spent time in NBA Academy Africa, or NBA Africa. I don't remember what way it is. Sorry. But he was a developmental piece. I think he was one of the youngest, if not the youngest prospect in the draft. He's got some tools to him, and then they also drafted Jamal Shed, who just from everything that I've seen has gotten rave reviews throughout the preseason. Like, he was one of the best defenders in college basketball last season. He was a staple to Kelvin Sampson over at Houston. Like, that is a guy, like, I know he's on the smaller side of things, but if you're a team that needs toughness, like, he could provide it from day one. In addition to, he got better as a playmaker over his time at Houston. He's not a terrible, terrible shooter, and I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to find his shot because of his size at the next level, but I do think he's going to be an impactful defender and a guy who, again, can provide some secondary playmaking. I don't know how much of these guys that they're going to play with the NBA club as opposed to them just being Raptors 905 and, trying to develop there, but I was just surprised that they didn't. I mean, they traded Jalen McDaniels. They just didn't do as much as I thought they would for a team that is, trying to rebuild, and maybe they don't have a ton of pieces to trade, but they didn't try to trade Chris Boucher. They didn't try to trade Bruce Brown. They didn't explore a Jakob Poeltl, or at least they didn't, I'm not saying they didn't explore it, but they didn't. Jakob Poeltl is still there. And he said on media day that they're not trying to win. So it's they had guys who they could have traded, but didn't. And so I'm just interested to see, okay, are they waiting until the February deadline to see what they can get for those guys? I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's possible. I mean, all the guys you've just named, this is a very, very, very young team. There's only 3 players who are 30 and up. Boucher, as you said, Olynyk, Gary Temple, who I don't think Gary Temple's even going to play much. I don't know what his thing is. He's 38 at this point. But Bruce Brown's 28. Jakob Poeltl's 29. Sure, we talked a little bit earlier. Bruce Brown went out and secured the bag, and now it's kind of just bounced around, but maybe he does have a role somewhere else. We saw him get traded to the Nuggets and have an immediate impact there. I bet there's still that dog in him somewhere to go and compete again at a higher level. Otherwise, you start looking at trading younger guys. I don't think they'll do quickly. I don't think they'll trade Scotty Barnes unless things really go badly for both of them. RJ Barrett is an intriguing one that maybe he has some trade value. He hasn't been superb yet so far. He hasn't kind of lived up to that hype, in my opinion. It's hard in New York when it was all that other stuff. But maybe this is his year where he can make a leap, jump up and be that first option, be the guy who runs this team offensively along with Quickly. I have optimism that they will be okay in the future. I just don't see it happening this year, and it's just one of those things that it's just the guys they have. It's such a young team. I mean, 2 guys who are 20, guys 18, so a handful of 22, 23-year-olds. Not a lot of NBA experience. And in the Eastern Conference, where there are teams who are absolutely loaded, and that's all it seems to be very top-heavy this year, in my opinion. I know last year it was the Celtics, and then everyone else was kind of from 2 to 10 was a 4-game difference. So I don't think it'll be like that this year, and I think we'll see a team like the Raptors get kind of smacked about a bit more by these top dogs.
Yeah, they're a team that I don't think is going to be very good again this year.
No. I wouldn't mind seeing Jamal Sheed kind of, and you brought him up earlier. I'm really interested to see his development at the next level because he came in kind of raw as a freshman in Houston. He's improved his shooting every year. Field goal percentage went down a bit this past year, but he was shooting more threes, so that's kind of to be expected. Defensively, though, he was so good. Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. He's the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year, an All-American, first team All-American. That's the impact that I think he'll have. If he can improve his shooting, even if he is at Raptors 905, if he can improve his offensive ability a little bit, he has the potential to be a very good player who is a little on the smaller side, only 6'1", so he's an intriguing one for the future. Curious to see how Grady Dick does this season because it looks like he's going to be moving into that starting role a bit more. Nothing special last year. Averaged 8.5 on 17 starts, 60 games. But he'll have a much more impact. Jacoby Walter, as you mentioned, their first round pick. I'm sure he'll see some minutes. I don't know what to expect of them this year. I don't expect anything big. Do you think they'll be any better or worse than they were last year? Or do you think it'll hang out right around that 25 win mark?
From a record perspective, I think they'll be around where they're at. I think that like maybe you see them at like 27, 28 wins. Because again, I think the coaching will be better this year. I think, they have a plan in terms of like, okay, you acquire a guy like Emmanuel quickly, you have RJ Barrett, you have Bruce Brown for potentially half a season to be a veteran lead. Like, I think that I think there's going to be more stability. I guess is my question. Like, I don't think you're going to be seeing like, again, Bruce Brown might be traded by February and Chris Boucher might be traded by February, both of whom are on expiring deals. Jakob Poeltl might be traded. But I think with them is like, with them, I genuinely think like those guys aren't going to be like, they're not going to command halls or anything like that. And so I think there's going to be more stability. I think Darko is going to have a plan for Emmanuel. He's going to have a plan for RJ. He's going to have a plan for Scotty Barnes, who I think catches a lot of shit for being a solid player, even though he's not like you're a floor spacer type winger or whatnot. But like, he's so good off the ball defensively. He's so good really on the ball defensively as well. He's a solid rebounder. He's a very good playmaker, at least for a guy at his age. Like, I think he's continuing to develop and he's gotten better really every single season. And so that's where it's like, I think they'll just continue to add more to his plate. And I think that's why one of the many reasons why they actually gave him that huge extension. Again, I know people are going to critique it with how much the cap is going to raise over the next few seasons. I don't really think it's going to look all that bad, personally. No. I could be completely wrong by that. But then I think they'll have a plan for, Grady Dick, Ochai Agbaji, who they got, I think, from Utah, Jacoby Walter, like some of these other younger not foundational, but like some of these younger pieces that they can, tap into a little bit. And I think there's just going to be more stability because I think Darko took over a situation last year. Like, obviously, yeah, Nick Nurse isn't there anymore. Like, you're bringing your own staff and you're trying to get everyone, acclimated to the scheme and whatnot. People are expecting a better year, even though, like, again, Pascal Siakam's entering it. He's on an expiring contract. I believe OG was on an expiring contract as well. Mm-hmm. So that was the situation in and of itself. Like, I felt like a core that run its course. And now you have this new core that, like, I think Darko will have a better plan for this upcoming season, even though, again, it may not translate to wins and losses, but development is what you need from this team. And I think that's what they'll have.
Yep, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I don't want to say they won't do it again, but I can't imagine they'll go on a 15-game losing streak, losing 20 of your last 25 games, 23 games. You lost 20 of them. It was very rough after that the trades, and I mean, to be expected. You're getting rid of your best players, and you got a bunch of guys trying to figure it out and kind of just make the most of what you can. There were some glimmers of good stuff I remember seeing last year, and they also had the whole issues off the court with Deontay Porter, and so it was just a perfect storm of everything that kind of hurt the Raptors a bunch last year, and maybe someone somewhere sold their soul for that 2019 NBA title, but Raptors have come back down to reality a bit since then, and I'm curious to see this year. I don't expect anything crazy. I like your shout of around 25 wins. I think they could get a little more. I like them at that 27, 28 because I do think everything will click a little better this year. There won't be all of a sudden getting rid of your entire starting five pretty much, gutting everything. And I think Scotty Barnes will take another step forward. Mentioned RJ Barrett. I think he could do it. Emmanuel quickly. I'm excited to see this team in a 3 years' time and see what they do.
Yeah.
And I think that all starts with what they do this season and how they do it, how they develop players they trade, bring in, all that stuff. It starts now to build this team for a few years' time because a lot of these teams at the top of the East are getting a little on the older side. We talked about before we started this, the Milwaukee Bucks are getting a little older. The Celtics aren't as young as they used to be. The Knicks,
And they're still pretty young. I mean,
yeah, they are young.
Guys.
But the Heat are getting a bit older, I would say. The Bulls, the Sixers. So it's not, and by old, I mean you're not a bunch of 22-year-olds
Yeah.
like the Raptors have. Raptors are, I don't know if they are the youngest, but they have to be one of the youngest rosters in the NBA. So we'll see. Maybe it builds something for the future. I don't know. Do you have any other final thoughts on the Toronto Raptors before we wrap this one up?
One thing I forgot to mention, another guy who I'm surprised they didn't trade last offseason who went for a minimum contract, which I still can't believe was a minimum contract, was Gary Trent Jr.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe they didn't trade him last. I mean, not again. I say that without knowing what deals were on the table. Let me just put that into perspective. Like, I'm not in the front office. I'm not negotiating with other teams about, Gary Trent Jr. or these other guys who are getting traded. But I'm just surprised that there wasn't a move done. But again, as we saw, he probably wanted a big extension, was asking for, I think, north of like 25 million or something like that. It was like around that point or around that marker. And it was just like, why would we do that if we're a team that is not trying to win or not trying to contend? And so his market dried out. I think we're going to be seeing that more often from some of these guys in the middle of the pack in terms of like guys who could potentially get mid-levels in the future with the second apron and all that stuff. But he was just another guy that I just thought of like, oh, wow, like I can't believe I just can't believe I forgot to mention him. And two, like
It's
crazy that he went for a minimum, even though he's competing for a title with the Bucks.
Yeah, and I mean, last offseason, he exercised his player option for $18.5 million. So I'm assuming he wanted a few-year deal. As Matt said, we weren't in there. We don't know what the deals were. We don't know what was being discussed. But I would assume he wanted something north of 20, 25 million a year for a few years and not just a one-year deal, which he ultimately did just sign a one-year deal with Milwaukee. I don't know the money-wise what it was off the top of my head, but hey, you go from Toronto, where you're not trying to win, according to Jacob Hodel, to Milwaukee, where your window's shutting and you need to win now kind of thing. So well, there we have it, folks. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you click that subscribe button at the bottom. Make sure you don't miss any of our other NBA previews. We have all 30 teams almost done with them. Cannot wait for the NBA season. Make sure you check out the Vendetta Sports Media website as well, vendettasportsmedia.com, for all of our written previews, all of our other NBA coverage, all of our other sports coverage around the entire world. It's a grand old time. For Matt and Jerry, thank you guys for watching.